Welcome to The Unfolding Debate, a special documentary podcast exploring one of the most profound and contentious issues facing the United Kingdom today, assisted dying. As members of Parliament gather in Westminster this Friday, June 20th, 2025, they stand on the precipice of a truly historic decision, one that could reshape social policy in England and Wales more significantly than anything since the legalization of abortion in 1967. At the heart of this debate is the Terminally Ill Adults End-of-Life Bill, a private member's bill championed by Labour MP Kim Leadbeater. Its core aim is to allow adults who are terminally ill with a prognosis of less than 6 months to live to apply for assistance to end their own lives, provided they are mentally competent and capable of self-administering the medication. This isn't euthanasia, where a medical professional administers the lethal dose. It's about providing a choice for self-determination at life's very end. The bill already cleared a significant hurdle last November, passing its second reading in the House of Commons with a majority of 55 votes, 330 in favour to 275 against. That vote was a free vote, allowing MPs to follow their conscience rather than party lines, highlighting the deeply personal and ethical nature of this issue. But since then, the journey has become even more emotionally and politically charged, with intense scrutiny and passionate arguments from both sides. Today, as the bill faces its third reading, the stakes couldn't be higher. So how has this pivotal piece of legislation evolved since that initial vote last November? The period following the second reading saw the bill enter its committee stage, a rigorous process where a dedicated group of 23 MPs meticulously examined every line. They heard from 50 witnesses, reviewed over 400 written submissions, and considered more than 500 proposed amendments, ultimately incorporating over 170 changes into the bill. Perhaps the most significant alteration concerns judicial oversight. Originally, the bill mandated that every single assisted dying request would require formal approval from a High Court judge. This was seen by many as a crucial safeguard. However, this requirement has now been removed. In its place, requests will be approved by 2 doctors and a newly established multidisciplinary panel. This panel is designed to include a social worker, a senior legal figure, such as a judge or King's Counsel, and a psychiatrist. The rationale behind this shift was largely pragmatic. The original High Court requirement was criticized as potentially costly, time-consuming, and likely to create an unmanageable workload for the High Court, rendering the bill unworkable in practice. Supporters argue that this panel approach, by integrating diverse expertise, strengthens protections through a broader range of perspectives and facilitates faster, more practical decision-making. Further oversight will come from a new voluntary assisted dying commissioner, who must be a current or former senior judge, responsible for appointing panel members and adjudicating appeals. Another notable change is the extended implementation timeline. Initially, the bill aimed for full operationalization within 2 years of royal assent. This has now been extended to 4 years, meaning that if the bill passes all parliamentary stages, it could become fully operational by 2029, around the time of the next general election. This extension acknowledges the immense logistical and systemic changes required to integrate such a profound social policy into the existing healthcare and legal frameworks. Crucially, protections for healthcare professionals have been significantly broadened. While the original draft already stated that doctors would not be compelled to participate, a new clause now explicitly extends this opt-out provision to no person. This means all individuals, including social care workers and pharmacists, are not obliged to take part in assisted dying and can conscientiously object without fear of professional discrimination. Beyond these major structural changes, the bill has incorporated several new provisions aimed at strengthening safeguards and deterring abuse. These include the establishment of independent advocates to support vulnerable individuals, such as those with learning disabilities, autism, or mental health conditions. A new disability advisory board is also to be created. Doctors assessing requests will now be required to undertake detailed training, covering areas like domestic abuse, coercive control, and safeguards for autistic people and those with learning disabilities. Furthermore, the penalty for coercing someone towards an assisted death has been dramatically increased from a maximum of 14 years to potentially life imprisonment, aligning it with sentences for murder. The monitoring of the law's application and compliance will also be rigorous, with details of every assisted death collected and published annually. It's also important to note what was rejected during the committee stage. Many amendments, often termed wrecking amendments by proponents, were defeated. These included attempts to restrict eligibility to those with only 1 month to live, to gag doctors from initiating discussions about assisted dying, or to double the mandatory reflection periods within the process. The rejection of these amendments indicates a clear intent by the bill's proponents to balance safeguards with practical accessibility for terminally ill individuals. These legislative changes have, predictably, had a significant impact on the positions of both supporters and critics, intensifying the debate as the bill approaches its final Commons vote. For proponents, such as Labour MP Kim Leadbeater and the advocacy group Dignity in Dying, the amendments have undeniably strengthened the bill. They assert that the legislation is now stronger, safer, and more workable. Kim Leadbeater herself has expressed confidence that MPs will vote to back the bill today. This confidence is bolstered by consistent public backing. A YouGov poll indicates that 72% of Britons support the bill in its current form, and a larger opinion poll found 3/4 of Britons support a change in the law across all demographics. Proponents argue this widespread public support is a clear mandate for Parliament to act. They also point to the growing international momentum, with assisted dying already legal in countries like Australia, Belgium, Canada, and parts of the United States, and recent legislative progress within the British Isles, notably in the Isle of Man. The revisions have even reportedly swayed some MPs who had previously offered only conditional support, now citing the strengthened safeguards as pivotal to their changed positions. However, opponents remain vehemently critical. Groups like Care Not Killing argue that despite the numerous amendments, the bill still lacks sufficient protections for vulnerable people and has been rushed. They contend that the removal of High Court oversight, in particular, makes the bill much less safe. A poll cited by Care Not Killing found that 41% of surveyed MPs disagreed that replacing judicial oversight with a panel instilled more confidence. A consistent and deeply held concern for opponents is the risk that disabled and elderly individuals could be directly or indirectly coerced into ending their lives, perhaps out of fear of being a burden or due to financial pressures. They often cite data from Oregon, USA, where a majority of those who chose assisted dying cited fear of being a burden as a reason. Several medical bodies have also voiced significant concerns. The Royal College of Psychiatrists, for instance, states unequivocally that it cannot support the terminally ill adults end-of-life bill for England and Wales in its current form. Their concerns include ambiguity regarding a clinician's duty of care for individuals at risk of self-harm, a critical lack of provisions for holistic assessment of unmet needs that might contribute to a person's desire to die, and the fundamental question of whether assisted dying is considered a treatment which has major legal implications. They also highlight the inadequacy of the Mental Capacity Act for assessing end-of-life decisions and a critical shortage of consultant psychiatrists to meet the new demands the bill would impose. The Royal College of Physicians, while maintaining a neutral position on the principle of assisted dying, also states that the bill currently remains deficiencies that would need addressing to achieve adequate protection of patients and professionals. They emphasize the need for face-to-face assessments by appropriately skilled mental health professionals for decisions on capacity and safeguards against coercion, and express concern that coordinating and independent doctors might work alone on critical decisions, deviating from standard multidisciplinary clinical practice. They also warn of the risk that some patients may choose assisted dying due to inadequate palliative care services and the potential for inequality of access if a large proportion of doctors opt out. Opponents consistently highlight the precarious state of the UK's National Health Service and the significant financial challenges facing hospice care, arguing that introducing assisted dying could divert already scarce resources from essential palliative care services. Their overarching call is to prioritize fixing the broken and patchy palliative care system. A persistent concern is the slippery slope argument, the fear that if passed, the legislation could eventually expand beyond terminal illness to include mental health conditions and other issues, citing precedents in Canada, Oregon, and the Netherlands. So, what happens next if the terminally ill adults end-of-life bill successfully passes its third reading in the House of Commons today? Its journey through Parliament will not be over. The legislation will then transition to the House of Lords, the UK's unelected second chamber. The Lords primarily functions as a revising chamber, tasked with scrutinising and refining proposed legislation. While they have the power to delay and amend policy, they cannot ultimately block a bill altogether, typically for more than about a year, due to the provisions of the Parliament Acts. A key factor for this particular bill is that assisted dying was not part of the governing Labour Party's election manifesto. This means the unwritten constitutional convention, known as the Salisbury Convention, which usually prevents the Lords from blocking manifesto bills, is less applicable. This gives the Lords more room to manoeuvre, potentially leading to more significant amendments or prolonged debate. The bill will go through similar stages in the Lords: first reading, second reading, committee stage for detailed line-by-line scrutiny, report stage for further amendments, and a final third reading. If the House of Lords introduces amendments, the bill will then be sent back to the House of Commons for their consideration. This iterative process, known as ping-pong, continues until both houses agree on the identical final text of the bill. While both houses strive for compromise, a bill can be lost if a stalemate is reached. Once both the Commons and the Lords have agreed on the final text, the bill will be ready for royal assent. This is the formal act by which the King agrees to make the bill into an Act of Parliament, effectively turning it into law. This is largely a constitutional formality and can happen very quickly after the ping-pong stage is complete. However, even after royal assent, the law won't immediately come into full effect. As mentioned, proponents have indicated that the full implementation will take 4 years. This means that if the bill passes all stages, it could become fully operational by 2020. For a complex bill like this, specific provisions may only come into force after a commencement order issued by a relevant government minister, allowing time for the necessary infrastructure, training, and regulations to be put in place. Conversely, if the terminally ill adults end-of-life bill fails to pass its third reading in the House of Commons today, its proceedings will come to an end for the current parliamentary session. Kim Leadbeater has warned that such a defeat could mean it would be another decade before this issue is brought back to Parliament, underscoring the profound implications of today's vote for the future of assisted dying in the UK. The debate surrounding the terminally ill adults end-of-life bill is a microcosm of broader societal questions about individual autonomy, the role of compassion in end-of-life care, and the responsibilities of the state. As MPs cast their votes today, they are not just deciding on a piece of legislation, they are shaping the very fabric of how the UK approaches death and dying. The journey has been long, the arguments passionate, and the outcome, for now, remains in the balance.